Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are getting into a question from the learner about what it takes to sustain God-honoring leadership. You are looking for a way to get a really thorough but still quick understanding of what makes leadership last. And our sources, I mean, we've got a great stack of research articles, all sorts of commentary. They reveal a truth that's, well, it's surprisingly simple.
But profoundly difficult.
Exactly. So our sources keep talking about this quiet crisis that's happening right under the surface of leadership today.
Right. And it's not what you'd think. That's not a crisis of talent.
No, not at all. There are so many smart, capable people out there. It's
Mhm.
it's a crisis of conviction and clarity.
That's it. Leaders are just incredibly busy. They're doing a lot of good things, but they often lack that deep certainty on why they're moving in a certain direction.
Or they know it's right, but they just hesitate. They hesitate when the pressure really hits.
And that's the core tension, isn't it?
Yeah.
The sources we looked at, they argue that leadership, fundamentally, it's not measured by how full your calendar is.
Or how much activity you generate.
No. It's measured by two things:
Mm-hmm.
faithful obedience under pressure and real clarity of purpose. Everything else just flows from that.
And this foundation, it seems to rely on these two inseparable forces, courage and vision.
Inseparable is the key word. The moment one is missing, leadership just fractures.
So if you have courage but no vision, it just becomes impulsive, it's
Yeah.
reactive.
The sources called it just noise. I thought that was powerful.
It is. And then on the other side, vision without courage, well, that just stays inert. It's a dream that's deferred.
Or, and this is a powerful phrase, postponed obedience.
Postpone obedience. Wow. Okay, let's untack this. Our mission today is to figure out exactly how to cultivate these two forces, these twin forces, so your leadership can move from, well, reactive survival to faithful stewardship.
I think we have to start with this idea of the slow erosion of leadership. It's probably one of the most critical things in the material. Leadership failure is, it's rarely a single catastrophic mistake. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
Instead, it weakens quietly, almost so you don't notice it. It happens when conviction gets muted by fear, or when you just keep moving without any real clarity.
So if it's not this big sudden collapse, what are those daily things, the subtle compromises that, cause this erosion to happen? Where does that rot even start?
It starts internally, always. It's when a leader starts to prioritize comfort, or maybe their reputation, over the actual call. They make this subtle shift from stewarding God's plan, which, always requires risk and sacrifice.
It's just managing their own agenda, their own comfort level.
Exactly. And it looks like avoiding those difficult but necessary conversations. A cost to relationships or reputation just feels too high in the moment.
Or maybe fudging the ethical standards just a little bit to land a big grant.
For sure. Or even just filling calendars with tasks that look productive. It gives the appearance of progress, but inside, the leadership is just hollow.
It's death by 1,000 avoided decisions.
Yes. And that's why that distinction you made earlier between management and stewardship is so critical.
Management is just about maintaining the systems, right? But stewardship is about protecting and multiplying a sacred trust.
And the number one threat to that trust is almost always internal. It's the fear that mutes conviction.
Which is why we need some really clear definitions for the forces that fight back against that drift. Let's start with courage.
Okay, so courage is defined in these sources as the inner resolve to obey God despite fear, uncertainty, or opposition.
Inner resolve, not just a feeling.
No, it's a choice. It's the choice to trust God more than you trust your circumstances or, what the critics are saying. The material is so clear on this. Courage is not the absence of fear.
Right. It's acting faithfully even when you're terrified, when the cost is high.
It's what allows a leader to stand firm when everything and everyone is telling them to just sit down and be quiet.
Okay, so that really reframes courage. It takes it out of this realm of brute strength and puts it into spiritual discipline, a choice. So if courage is the stand, then what's the move?
That's vision. Vision is the God-given clarity that defines your direction, your purpose, and the redemptive outcome you're aiming for.
And this is where people get stuck, I think. They confuse vision with just, personal ambition.
Strategic forecasting. And strategy is important, don't get me wrong. But vision, in this context, is something deeper. It's spiritual perception. It's a kind of clarity that gets formed through serious time in Scripture and prayer.
It gives you a horizon for your action.
Exactly. It tells you where you are going and why, in the end, it actually matters.
So what's fascinating here is how they have to work together.
That's the whole point. Alone, they fail. But together, They transform leadership from just a series of tasks into, well, a ministry of stewardship. You need the clarity to see the mountain, and then you need that gut-level resolve to actually start climbing it,
Even when the path is scary and you can't even see the top.
especially then.
Let's get into the cost of imbalance, because the examples here are they're so striking. You talked about postponed obedience. That's what happens when you have vision but no courage.
Right. And it leads to inertia, paralysis.
It's just the silent tragedy of all these noble plans that never ever get off the ground.
Leaders just wait. They wait for the ideal conditions, or they wait for the fear to go away completely.
Which it never does.
Never. And they defer God's calling until the moment is gone. The sources give us a perfect case study for this. One, the learner will know instantly. Israel at Kadesh Barnea.
Oh, right, from Numbers. The vision could not have been clearer.
Not at all. The promised land. They have the mandate, the promise.
They even had physical proof. That huge cluster of grapes the spies brought back. They knew the destination.
They absolutely did. But fear reframed their reality.
How so?
Well, 10 of the spies saw all the evidence of the vision,
Yeah.
but they interpreted it entirely through a lens of anxiety.
They focus on the giants in the land, the fortified cities, the obstacles.
Exactly. And they concluded that obedience was just too dangerous. They had to clear what the land, but they had no courageous how. They couldn't trust God to deliver it.
And the result was total paralysis, rebellion.
And 40 years of pointless wandering in the desert. The tragedy wasn't a lack of information. It was that their fear was more convincing than God's promise.
A total failure of courage. Decades just wasted.
And you see this today, don't you? Leaders get stuck in endless strategic planning sessions. They're always waiting for the perfect moment to launch something or make a necessary but uncomfortable change.
They're overanalyzing the giants.
And the analysis becomes an intellectual excuse for fear-driven restraint.
Okay, so that's the failure to stagnation. But let's talk about the other extreme, because while paralysis looks like failure, sometimes what looks like success, all that constant motion, can also be failure.
That's courage without vision, the noise, the recklessness.
It's reactionary strength.
Yes, it's forceful, it's often loud, and sometimes it's really destructive. Leaders act quickly, but often, unwisely. They're making decisions without real discernment or foresight.
And the classic biblical example of this, according to our sources, is King Saul.
Saul had that raw courage in battle, at least at first, but he kept acting impulsively. He wasn't anchored in God's sustained vision.
Like when he offered the unauthorized sacrifice because he was anxious.
Right, or when he impulsively defied God's specific commands about the Amalekites. His boldness was completely unstable because it wasn't aligned with God's long-term plan.
It was untethered bravery.
And it led to his downfall. He lost his kingdom. The sources say that instability is the predictable result of untethered bravery.
So what does that look like today? In a modern organization?
It's the problem of visionless activity. And it is everywhere.
I can imagine.
It's leaders who are busy, they're sincere, they're well-intentioned, but they are constantly reactive.
Chasing the latest trend, implementing a new program every quarter.
Pivoting drastically based on whoever is shouting the loudest in the room. They give the appearance of productivity, the calendar is full, tasks are checked off, there's constant movement.
But internally, they're adrift.
Completely. They're just managing the chaos they created instead of stewarding a clear mission.
So that brings us to the most important part, the ideal. How do we actually integrate these two forces?
The sources point us directly to Joshua's commissioning. It's the clearest template we have for integrating courage and vision, especially under intense pressure.
Right. In Joshua 1, God is preparing him to take over from Moses, and he pairs the command for fortitude with the mandate for direction.
That's the key.
He says, be strong and courageous. That's the courage stand part. And then immediately follows it with, be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left.
And that's the vision move piece.
Okay, so the insight here, the aha moment, is the mechanism of how they integrate.
Yes. God doesn't command courage in a vacuum. And he doesn't give direction without also providing the fortitude to follow it. He strengthens the leader
The be strong and courageous part.
so that they can pursue the established direction found in the law.
So the direction, the vision, is actually the source of the strength. The courage comes from the vision.
That's it. How does Joshua become strong and courageous? By meditating on the law, day and night. By making sure his movements are aligned with the ultimate purpose. Studying the vision is what literally cultivates the inner resolve he needs to face those walled cities.
Without the law, his courage would have just become another King Saul moment. Impulsive.
Untethered. The law was his compass and his spiritual backbone.
And you see this pattern repeated all through scriptures, right? Leadership that lasts always pairs boldness with divine direction.
Think about Moses. His incredible boldness before Pharaoh, risking everything. It was only effective because it was perfectly aligned with God's defined vision for Israel's deliverance.
The courage served the plan.
Exactly. Or look at Esther. Her courage wasn't just a reckless gamble. It was a strategically timed move toward a divine purpose.
And what about Paul? His missionary journeys weren't just random acts of fervor.
Not at all. His travels were guided by that God-given vision to bring the gospel to the Gentiles. That vision was the compass that kept him going.
And it was sustained by just relentless courage, facing beatings, imprisonment, rejection.
In every one of these cases, their character was forged under pressure. But their movements were always governed by clarity.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it seems like leadership is consistently forged under pressure.
I think the sources make that very clear. God intentionally calls leaders into situations that stretch their character and test their courage. Because it's only in those moments that we really find out if our obedience is truly faithful or if it was just, convenient.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It means you have to intentionally cultivate this integration. You have to shift from just management getting things done to real sacred stewardship.
Precisely. In the biblical sense, leadership is, first and foremost, stewardship. It's this sacred responsibility. You're entrusted with people, with resources, with a vision.
And you're accountable before God for it.
The moment we forget that accountability, we open the door to all those internal threats we talked about.
Yeah.
Fear, compromise, visionless activity.
To help you move from just analyzing this to taking action, our sources provide two, I would say, unsettling but essential diagnostic questions. They cut right to the core of where imbalance might exist for you today.
The first question, it directly probes for a lack of courage. And it is this: where am I currently shrinking back, even as conviction calls me to stand?
Oof. That checks for fear-driven restraint.
Are you postponing obedience because the cost, whether it's emotional, financial, relational, just feels too high right now?
And the second question, this one probes for a lack of vision. Where am I moving forward yet unsure of why or toward what end?
That immediately checks for that dangerous, visionless activity.
Are you confusing frantic movement with genuine progress?
Are you just maintaining momentum because stopping feels worse than drifting?
Wow, those are tough.
They are. And the remedy isn't a new strategy book. It's deliberate cultivation. You have to nurture the courage to stand firm in obedience and the vision to move forward with clarity. Those are the twin pillars.
So, to recap this whole deep dive, courage lets you stand firm when the pressure is on. Vision directs that action toward God's purposes with clarity. You have to have both.
Otherwise, you end up in the inertia of Kadesh Barnea or the reckless noise of King Saul.
Leadership is not measured by your speed or how visible you are. It's measured by long obedience, by faithfulness under pressure.
Which, this raises one last important question to leave you with. If leadership failure is rarely one big catastrophic event, but it's this slow erosion caused by daily compromise, what small, seemingly insignificant, fear-driven compromise that you made today, that tough conversation you put off, that corner you cut on a principle, what if that is the greatest threat to your long-term vision?
That's something to think about as you continue to lead.